This is it. 2021 is coming to a close. We're going to talk about the best and worst news from this year. So let's just go ahead together as a people and check it out. And welcome to our final sensational Sunday of 2021. I'm Michael, texted out this week. So I'm a little bit more professional, even though my shirt's all wrinkled and gross looking. That doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Here to talk about the best and worst of 2021. So this is going to be a mix of news and product releases that I feel like were significant for this year. And this year was just super weird. Like, last week, if you watched my video, I was confused to which year it was. I'm still thinking it's 2020 because this whole year was just kind of a blur. And I was looking back at the stories and I'm like, you know what? A lot of stuff did happen this year. And one thing that I already forgot about was that LG stopped making smartphones. So yes, this is something that I don't think people are going to notice for a few years until the smartphone market starts to get stagnant and they're going to be like, where's LG? Where's LG? Well, y'all forgot about them. That's why they stopped making phones. So it's your fault. I'm just kidding. But honestly, I never had an LG phone. But for people that were looking for Android phones that didn't like Samsung, I was always like, oh, well, LG has a good phone that's out. They always had decent phones. They just didn't have the best phone. They just didn't make any splashes. Then they did the LG Wing, which was not the dual screen phone that people really wanted. And that was kind of it for LG. Like, they were losing too much money in the smartphone game, and they were like, you know what? We out of here. It really sucks, but RIP to LG. Another big, impactful story that kind of falls in between the best and worst this year was we finally got a judgment, kind of, on the whole Apple versus Epic trial. If you're not familiar with it, I covered it a bunch of times, so I'm not going to go into too much detail, but basically, Epic sued Apple over removing Fortnite from the App Store last year. And when everything go to trial, it's always like 10,000 years before it ever gets settled. The reason this was a big deal is because part of the suit was Epic was accusing Apple of being a monopoly because of the App Store. And basically they wanted Apple to allow them to pretty much put their own App Store on the iPhone, which didn't end up happening. And in this case, it was kind of a 50-50 split decision, in my opinion. Like, both companies won and lost. Apple won in the way that they were considered not to be in a monopoly. And then also, Epic had to reimburse them for the money that they lost from the stunt that they pulled with purposely adding their own payment method to the App Store to take money to circumvent the agreement that they had with Apple. So because that agreement was in place for them to pay Apple this percentage of money if they took payments on the App Store, they had to reimburse them for that. However, the judge ruled that Apple had to allow third-party payment methods and link to third-party websites on the App Store, which they're still working on. And I think Epic is countersuing. It's still in litigation, but overall, we kind of got like a verdict to the trial that had been ongoing. And I think the fact that Apple is going to have to eventually allow alternative payment methods to the App Store is kind of big. That's really going to change the way that the App Store works, probably for the better. In the best category, if there's one thing that stood out to me the most, and I'm not trying to hop on Apple's bandwagon or anything, but it was definitely the redesigned MacBook Pros, because they literally brought back all the stuff. Like, I didn't think it was possible. I was blown away. Like, honestly, when they had an HDMI port, I was like, what's that? What is that port on an Apple product? Is that HDMI? Like, I was really blown away that they brought back the HDMI port. An SD card slot. They did the new mini LED screen. The performance is there. The power is there. It's super quiet. It doesn't overheat. Like, they finally delivered the ultimate MacBook to the point where I'm like, well, now if you're considering a MacBook, there's actually a reason to buy one other than you just want the software. Like, there's actually a lot of good stuff that they did with this computer. So Apple kind of getting back into the computer game and kind of reinventing the wheel by stepping back, really. Like, the only thing that was new is that the fact that they're making their own processor, but they kind of stepped back to their older design and was like, we're going to combine these two things to make the best possible product, which is awesome. So that was definitely like a thing that's going to stick out this year. I think Apple Silicon is going to be big. It's probably going to push the Windows side to invest more in ARM because they weren't hitting before Apple started busting out their own processors. Now they got to focus on this market because Apple is able to get this crazy performance with this crazy battery life. They got to really be able to compete with that, and they can't do that using the current like mobile chips, which are basically scaled down desktop chips. I think this is going to push the Windows side forward as far as getting more efficient computers to kind of battle the MacBook. Another thing that I have to put in the best category before I forget is the Steam Deck. Like, I'm super hyped for it. When they announced the Steam Deck, like, you don't understand. I love the Nintendo Switch. I like Nintendo's handhelds, but I also like competition in the space. That's why I kind of missed the PSP era. That was my favorite era of handhelds. You have the PSP and you have the DS, and you're getting good games on both. Completely different experience. So the Steam Deck, my voice just gave out right then. The Steam Deck, if you look at what Steam Deck's trying to do with affordable PC gaming handheld that can actually game, yeah, it's been done before. There's products out right now that you can buy, but they're like $800 to $1,000, starting off at $400. This is going to open it up to a lot more people, and it's going to bring more competition to the handheld space, which is literally dominated by Nintendo. So I'm super looking forward to it. Speaking of Nintendo, let's talk about my biggest disappointment of the year. And I'm going to preface this by saying that this is not Nintendo's fault at all. This was all the hype train, but a part of it's Nintendo's fault, because at this point, I do kind of feel like we should have got some kind of system with upgraded internals. But you know what? That's fine. We didn't. We got the Switch OLED, which is awesome. I really love the Switch OLED, honestly. It's one of my favorite things from this year. Like, one of the things I personally use the most. But biggest disappointment, of course, is the Switch Pro. The fact that we didn't get a Switch with upgraded internals. We've waited 800 years for this. Come on. Like, we just want something with better internals that could run games better. But we didn't get that. But like I said, the Switch OLED is still awesome, and for me, it's still worth it as a handheld only Switch player. So yeah, it is disappointing. We still got a good system, but we could have had a great system come out this year. But it just didn't happen, and I do think a lot of it was because of the chip shortages, which makes sense, but the Switch OLED is still awesome. Another disappointment, slight disappointment, is the Steam Deck getting delayed. I mean, realistically, I didn't get my pre-order in early enough anyway to be in Q1, but it did get officially delayed till next year. If it wasn't delayed, people would just now start getting them. But it wasn't that big of a deal because they just announced it like around June-ish, July, like the middle of the year. So it's not like we've been waiting for years for this thing. So that's fine. It's just still a little disappointing. So now I want to talk about a few things I'm looking forward to for next year. So I'm just going to go ahead, since we're already talking about it, and say the Steam Deck. Like, duh. Like, I'm super excited to see what this thing can do, and it's going to be so open. It's running Linux. Like, it's going to be crazy. I just want to get my hands on it and play around with it, install some games, install whatever applications. Like, this could be like the go-between between a laptop but a more capable tablet, and you can dock it and use it kind of as a desktop workstation too if you really want to. So it's just going to be a super exciting product. I'm really looking forward to it. The other thing, which maybe we'll get some information on it, maybe not, and that is the Apple VR/AR glasses, whatever they're working on. I'm just curious about it. Is it going to be standalone? Is it going to require the iPhone? What is it going to do? Is it going to be targeted for gamers or productivity? Like, we don't know anything about what they're working on. It could just end up not being a product at all. It could be something that they're testing right now and then they shelve it. But I am really curious to see what comes out of that. Now, I can't leave without mentioning this first. Yes, I could have said Meta under biggest disappointment, but honestly, I'm going to give it a chance and see what happens. I think it's going to be stupid. If you want my personal opinion, I don't think they know what they're doing. They're just trying to hop on this NFT train. But I felt like I needed to mention it because I didn't mention it in the biggest disappointment. But technically, they haven't done anything that's disappointing yet, but it's Facebook, so we'll just give it a few months and I'll be back on the disappointment list. Anyway, that's going to bring this video and my 2021 news videos to a conclusion. But if you enjoyed this video, then make sure to tell a friend, tell a coworker, like, share, and subscribe, and always do at least 2 things at the same time. See you next year. Actually, that's not true. I have a video on Wednesday, but for the news videos, I'll see you next year.